The original 6 rivals will meet again in the first round of playoffs this season. This should be interesting. Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm Victoria. I talk all things Toronto sports from Scotland, and today we're talking about the first round. The fact that the Leafs are facing the Bruins in the first round, which I don't quite know how I feel. I was fully convinced that the Leafs were already matched up against Florida yesterday, to the point where I actually was about to start planning this video, but start planning it for the Leafs versus the Panthers instead, because in my mind I was like, that's who they're playing. And then it dawned on me yesterday, I was like, oh, actually that's not the case. Boston lost 2-0 to Washington on Monday night, and it dawned on me that in the Tuesday night games, if Florida beat the Leafs and Boston lost to Ottawa, they switched places and it would actually be Florida that would win the division, and it would mean that Boston were the ones playing the Leafs. But on Tuesday night, the Leafs were 2-0 up against Florida at the end of the first period, and all seemed fine and well. Nothing was going to go wrong there, right? Right? I won't lie, I fell asleep during the game last night, and I woke up and suddenly realised that the Leafs were facing Boston in the first round. My whole world changed in the space of a nap. I had already said, and I said it in a video before, that I wanted the Leafs to face the Bruins for entertainment purposes alone, which I still stand by. I think that the Leafs and the Bruins is a much more entertaining matchup than the Leafs and the Panthers. In turn, that means that the Panthers are now facing the Lightning, which is also, for that market, a much better matchup. So in terms of entertainment value, I feel that this is a much better scenario. In terms of the Leafs actually progressing past the first round, I had my concerns when it came to both the Panthers and to the Bruins. You know, I think there was problems with both, but it's Boston. So I also do think that if the Leafs can beat the Bruins in the first round, I think that is a much more satisfying win than if they were to beat Florida. Obviously, it's satisfying winning in the first round, no matter who you win against, of course. But there are so many just demons when it comes to the Leafs playing Boston that win would, I think the city of Toronto would literally explode if that happened. I think that would be insane. And I do wonder if they were able to do that, would that be the momentum that they needed perhaps to go further in their cup run than they did last year? I think it's likely that this is going to be fun to watch. I am excited and also scared at the same time. So now we know that the first round matchup is going to be between the Leafs and the Bruins. What could this possibly look like, and what are the Leafs' chances? I'm scared. So this will actually be the first time that the Leafs are the lower seed in a playoff series since the pandemic shortened 2019-2020 season, but home ice was, to me anyway, never something that was that much of a concern. Sometimes I think that because the heat and the pressure on the Leafs is just so high that it almost slightly lowers expectations when you start off away, and it might just relieve that pressure and let them perform better. That's my thoughts anyway. It could go the opposite way. You never know in the postseason, but home ice wasn't really something that I personally cared about too much. As all fans will know, the Leafs and the Bruins have a very turbulent history when it comes to the postseason, meeting 16 times total in the history of the two franchises, and both teams have won 8 playoff series each, so it's completely split. But this perspective completely changes when you consider that the Leafs haven't won a playoff series against Boston since 1959, as I said. Boston have 6 straight playoff series wins against the Leafs, with the most 3 being the most renowned and the most heartbreaking among Leafs fans anyway. In 2013, the Leafs of course lost Game 7 in overtime after leading 4-1. That was back during the Phil Kessel era, but fast forward into the Matthews and Marner era, and in both 2018 and 2019 the Leafs lost Game 7 to the Bruins again. The 2018 loss saw the Leafs rally from being 3-1 down in the series, and in Game 7 they had a 4-3 lead halfway through the game before Boston scored like 4 goals in the third period. And despite having a 3-2 series lead in 2019, Boston went on to win 4-2 in Toronto and went through to the next round with a 5-1 victory on home ice. So Boston have always come out top so far, and this will be the 4th time these teams have met in the postseason since 2013, and Brad Marchand is the only player to have actually been playing in all 4 of those series. But we're not in 2013, 2018 or 2019 anymore, so maybe this year could be different. However, unfortunately, as soon as you look at the Leafs and the Bruins from this season alone, it doesn't look any more reassuring for Leafs fans. The Leafs haven't won a single game against Boston this year. They lost 3-2 in a shootout back in November, 4-3 in overtime back in December, and then 4-1 twice just at the start of March. 4-1 is not a good omen, as we all know. I think the only thing is 2 of those games were either a shootout loss or an overtime loss, which of course going into the postseason is not relevant, of course. So I mean, those games were very tight and could have ended up completely differently, but the Leafs still haven't been able to completely take a game against Boston this year. I really think Boston have been just super impressive this season, and within the 4 games that the 2 teams have played against each other this year, Boston have scored 14 goals whereas the Leafs have only scored 7. The Leafs power play was 9.1% compared to Boston's 30%. Just doesn't look very good statistically. There's nothing statistically that's in the Leafs' favour. The Leafs are definitely the underdogs going into the first round. Scared. I don't even think on paper Boston have the strongest of teams this season, especially in comparison to other years. But when you watch them, they just have this chemistry in the team that's really, really impressive, and there seems to be just a good connection between the players that they have, and in my opinion they're definitely one of the strongest teams in the NHL. And in my opinion, they were the strongest team that the Leafs were going to match up against. I did think that they were stronger than the likes of Florida, or if the Leafs had gone to a wild card and they'd ended up with the Rangers or something, which I would have loved. I would have loved to have seen the Rangers, but anyway, never mind. Maybe next year. So my thoughts, my takes on what the Leafs' chances are, really. I am a little scared, but I am also excited. I do think this is like a really exciting matchup. In my opinion, it's like the most exciting one that we've had probably since 2019. Ultimately, it was really between Florida and Boston, and just to touch on it, there's this whole discourse about Boston intentionally losing, and I mean, I have seen some Bruins fans agreeing, and you know, that's perfectly possible. If that's what Boston were aiming for, then they sort of had the power in their hands to control that. But the Leafs also had the power just in Tuesday night's game to beat Florida. They were 2-0 up, and then they would have faced Florida. So if that's really what they were going for, then they really should have grabbed hold of that a little bit more. But whatever, you can't change stuff. Whether Boston did it intentionally or whether they just really did end up losing to Washington and to Ottawa, who knows? At the end of the day, this is the matchup that we have, so might as well get excited about it. And also a little terrified. But the only options that the Leafs had were to have Florida or to have Boston, and given that on Tuesday they lost 5-2 to Florida, and also it was a disaster last year against Florida, and I don't know if Florida genuinely were overlooked, or I don't know what it was. I think Florida last year were completely overlooked, and not only in that series against the Leafs, but obviously they went on really far into the playoffs and they did really well, and that is the sort of experience that you don't really want to be facing off against, I don't think. Like, they have such recent experience. So do you really, you want Florida? The Stanley Cup finalists? Florida? Who put you out in the second round last year? Who just beat you 5-2? Not sure. And even though Boston are of course a really tough opponent, I don't know if Florida were going to be an easier opponent. I think the history between these two teams also has the potential to make it more exciting, and I want to see a lot of passion from the Leafs. I want to see them really stepping up to the mark here because they have to, and I want to see them proving that they are worthy of going far in the postseason. I really want to see that. I want to see the core in particular stepping up, because a lot of the Leaf star players tend to go a little quieter in the postseason, and that's just, you're not getting paid to do that. That's unacceptable. The postseason is by no means the same as the regular season. That's why it's wildly different. At the end of the day, Boston were the best team in the NHL last year, and they completely choked in the first round and they were out. President's Trophy winners, and then got nothing in the postseason. So it doesn't necessarily mean that just because a team is amazing in the regular season that they're going to be the same in the postseason. It does not mean that at all. And so it makes it really hard to judge, because until you've sort of started watching the games and the rounds started, it is hard to tell. And ultimately, how much does it actually matter who the Leafs were facing this year? I'm not too sure, because I think the Leafs' biggest battle is with themselves. I think unless the Leafs players actually step up to the mark, and unless we have solid goaltending and everything is sort of coherent within the team, it doesn't matter who you're up against, you're likely to lose if those pieces aren't in place. But if you have actually got your shit together, then again, it doesn't matter who you're facing, you have the likelihood to be able to go far. The Leafs were always going to have a tough opponent. The way that the NHL is right now, and the way that the playoff format is, means that you are going to have a tough matchup. No matter who you face, it really doesn't matter. And so in a way, you might as well just get excited for the fact that it's probably going to be a really entertaining and feisty playoff series. I think that is something to really look forward to, rather than feeling completely weighted down by all of the past things that come between Toronto and Boston, which of course are there, and I would hope that, you know, everyone's very aware of that. But I think you can still be excited and hopeful, because who knows what these guys will do. Who knows? Who knows? So there are my thoughts on the Leafs versus the Bruins in the first round. I'm excited, I'm also scared, but comment down below, what do you guys think about Toronto facing Boston? Did you see it coming? Did you want Florida? What do you think it's going to be like? Do you think the Leafs will step up to the mark? What are you expecting? And are you excited or scared, or a combination of the two? And also, I am thinking of doing like last year I did do quick sort of short videos after every playoff game, and I'm thinking of doing the same this year. So also let me know if that's something that you want to see. I will get them up as quickly as I can after the games. Obviously the games will be finishing at like 3 AM, or actually I think the Leafs' first game is going to be on Saturday, and I think it's possibly at 8 Eastern time, which means it starts at 1, which means it won't finish until like 4. So I will have those up as quickly as I possibly can, but let me know if that's something that you definitely want to see. So thank you so much for watching. Happy playoff season, everybody. The time is officially here, the most exciting time in the NHL calendar, so let's embrace it and enjoy it. Make sure to like this video and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll be back very soon with more Toronto sports chats from across the pond. Bye guys.